In 1882, Stetson met Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and this relationship certainly was a roller coaster of ups and downs during courtship, marriage, and divorce. What points to Stetson's genius and determination is that he would push through the pressures of poverty and a 7-year tumultuous relationship to be very productive and artistically successful, developing and staying true to his standards. Part of his success was his identification of gifted Providence artists who shared his vision, ambition, and were not afraid to work hard and make things happen. Edward Bannister, a very successful artist, shared a close relationship with Stetson. Stetson visited with him often and listened very closely to his advice and counsel. In November of 1881, Stetson writes in his diary, "The only person that seems to understand my art ideas is Bannister, and I say more to him of my art feelings than to any other man." Equally as close to Stetson was George Whitaker, who went on painting excursions with the young artist and journeyed with him to view important exhibitions in New York and Boston, bringing back his art intelligence to share with fellow art club artists. Reflecting back to this time in the 1880s, Whitaker wrote, "Stetson was perhaps the most gifted of his Providence associates. Stetson had a thoughtful, poetic mind, an individuality all his own, and a spirit that led him to please his own high taste rather than that of his less intellectual and intelligent public. He never painted down to satisfy anybody's whims." Perhaps Stetson's most remarkable friendship during this time was with Sidney Burley. Of a similar age, 5 years older, Burley was Stetson's equal in creative innovation and ambition. Away in Paris during the founding of the Providence Art Club, Burley returned to embrace the club and its mission with great vigor. Moreover, Burley brought knowledge of William Morris and the arts and crafts movements and was eager to play out the movement in America. In 1885, Burley orchestrated the design and building of the Fleur-de-Lis Art Studio and founded the Art Workers Guild. With these two events, Burley became one of the earliest artists to articulate the arts and crafts movement in America. The movement would later hit the mainstream and sweep the rest of the country in the 1890s. Stetson was Burley's collaborator, along with John Aldridge decorating the exterior of the Fleur-de-Lis. Both artists gained national exposure when their renderings of their personal studios were published in the New York magazine Art and Decoration. Stetson and Burley would become lifetime friends, and for many years shaped the early art scene in Providence. They aligned with powerful and influential men in Providence and swayed the Providence Art Club Executive Board and exhibit committees to play out their clever ideas. As they established their painting careers, Burley's Art Worker Guild helped supplement their income from painting sales with decorative projects like the Gardner House in Little Compton and the Clapp House on Stimson Avenue in Providence. Stetson and Burley, two young and dynamic artists, were putting the Providence art scene on the map and dominated the Providence Art Club activities. But what of Stetson's success as a maker of art? Did he meet the high standards that he set for his colleagues beginning in 1880? Unfortunately, he did not. It is pretty clear that during his early years, Stetson struggled to create paintings that were in concert with his sophisticated knowledge of image making. The complex images in his mind did not materialize on canvas initially. It would take hours and hours in the studio teaching himself the finer points of oil painting to achieve that goal. Therefore, the works from this period, 1876 to 1882, are simple, naive, and charming. Stetson is a young, self-taught, and financially struggling painter, and the quality of his paintings is below even his own high standards. He complains constantly in his diary about his poor draftsmanship and need for a model to study the figure. Here are two examples of early work: an 1878 Barbizon-style landscape and an awkwardly modeled figure from 1880. The landscape shows an absorption of the Barbizon purity of unspoiled land, a subject matter he would abandon to nymphs and ancient myths in later years. The figurative work in the early 80s evidences his lack of funds to hire a model to study. He cannot afford to pay for a model until 1882, and we see the anatomical deficiencies in his painting. Stetson laments in his diary, "I cannot yet paint hands because I have no models." But in 1881, Stetson starts to produce some stunning work. He has his first one-man show at the Providence Art Club, showing much progress and earning critical praise from the press and colleagues. Stetson wrote of the 1881 exhibit, quote, "The pictures I have in this exhibition are my very best. They tell me that I have improved a great deal in the past year, and it is true." End of quote. But the show also speaks of his poverty. Stetson is unable to attend the opening reception because he could not afford the proper attire. He again writes, "I could not attend the reception tonight as I had nothing suitable to wear. Those present would not enjoy themselves so well if reminded of my poverty by my old coat." Stetson's struggles are heart-wrenching, and while he continues to have his ups and downs financially throughout his life, the early 1880s mark his most difficult time. (1882) is the year that artistically Charles Walter Stetson is transformed and finds his visual voice. The pivotal painting in his career is A Beggar in a Pleasure Garden, shown in the 1882 Boston Art Club exhibition. Reviewed in the Boston Evening Journal, the critics wrote, "Whoever this artist is, it is evident that with training and persistence, he will yet do some remarkable work." And best of all for Charles, he sold the painting. A Beggar in a Pleasure Garden marks the critical turning point for young Stetson and provided him with new opportunities. It was still early in his Providence career, but between 1882 and 1888, he would go on to secure more Boston exhibits at Dahl and Richards, garner great critical reviews in Providence and Boston, receive a lucrative etching commission from Beriah Wall in 1883, and in March of 1884, he had a one-man show at the Providence Art Club showing 161 works, 83 oils, and 77 watercolors, of which 14 sold. The gallery, Noyes and Blakesley, had another Boston exhibit for Stetson, and he, of course, was working away in Burleigh's 1885 Art Workers Guild while securing a lovely studio in the magical Fleur-de-Lis building. One review from the 1882 Dahl and Richards show stated, "Altogether, Mr. Stetson shows such feeling for color and such ability and originality in the use of it as to set him apart from all other artists." Another Providence Journal review in 1884 proclaimed, "Mr. Stetson's exhibition at the Art Room is well worth a visit, if only to show that a man born and bred in our cold New England can be a Venetian in his love of color. But the exhibit of over 150 works is most credible to the artist industry, and the quality of them as a whole most credible to the artist." Despite success on the career front, Stetson's personal life continued to deteriorate. After chasing Charlotte to Pasadena and remaining there for a year from 1889 to 1890, he returned for his last tour of Providence from 1890 to 1894. Nothing more dramatically shows this low point in his life than having to move domicile from their marital home on 21 Humboldt Avenue to the studio space at the Fleur-de-Lis. Stetson's second Providence day was less joyful and fraught with divorce proceedings and isolation. Ironically, on the art front, Stetson returned from Pasadena no longer the hesitant and insecure painter he had left, but a more confident and skilled artist. He transitioned into a successful and critically acclaimed artist, known for his genius in color and vivid imagination. His liability as a poor draftsman was overshadowed by his other strengths. Stetson wrote of his works, My pictures are mysteries to many, if not most people. I think they take me for a crank. The power of my color attracts and mystifies at the same time. My weak modeling and my lack of grace are quite apparent, not to all, but to me. There were some artistic achievements in Providence during his second tour. Stetson was selected for an important New York show in 1890 at the American Art Galleries. Critics were deeply divided on the painting of Stetson, some attacking his drawing and others praising his loose brushwork and imaginative ideas. Stetson, however, was nonplussed over the debate. At the age of 32, he had had enough heartache and triumph in the world of art to realize that his artistic life was on the right track. I know how bad my drawing is, and I know how good it is also. I would rather it remain as bad as it is than have it grow into the prettiness of the modern pictures. Stetson had unusual ideas to express in his painting, often based within the vernacular of ancient sources and literary references. He had a fluid brush technique and an unequal command of color. In a series of Providence Journal articles in 1891, he articulates clearly what it is that makes an artist great and challenges Providence and the Providence Art Club to pick up the mantle and move on to excellence. Stetson found the Providence Art Club upon his return from Pasadena less serious and more social. The Providence community, he complained, was not progressive enough and needed to pursue a noble largesse of art in a more serious manner. So, for a disillusioned Stetson, it was time to exit Providence in 1894. Stetson by then was happily remarried to Grace Channing and was reunited with his daughter, Catherine. From Providence, Charles Walter Stetson would travel and paint widely from 1894 to 1900 in Pasadena and Italy, then on to Boston and Rome from 1900 to 1911. The paintings from this post-Providence period, beginning in 1894, are among the most remarkable and poetic of his career. It is primarily this body of work that propelled him onto the national American art scene and caught the attention of many museums. So, after this quick tour of Stetson, we reflect on why is this artist relevant to Providence today? Scholars, artists, curators, and collectors gravitate to Stetson because of the painful struggles he articulates in his diary as a painter and the insight he so eloquently expresses about what makes art culture progressive in a successful society. Whether it be the Renaissance, Providence at the height of the Industrial Revolution, or Providence today, the issues that plague the visual arts are timeless. For the individual artist to advance, it is important to be surrounded by ambitious, motivated, and quality artists like Stetson's friendships with Bannister, Whitaker, and Burley. Stetson reinforced that making great art still requires navigating through a myriad of other artist visions to develop one's own voice. It is a continuous curve of pushing, developing, and refining. Stetson succeeded in a national arena because he made his mark as a colorist and an imaginative, figurative painter. He did not compromise. He writes, "The buying public wishes for still life and prettiness of every description. It wishes for something kittenish. It cares nothing for historical or religious painting, nothing for poetry and passion. I cannot make pretty pictures." So if you are an artist, you need to ask yourself, do you want to be an E.C. Levitt or a Charles Walter Stetson? For cultural institution, it is about setting the bar on a national and international level, not ignoring local trends, but going beyond the parochial. Stetson and Whitaker visited important exhibits in New York, and Burley and Stetson staged important national loan shows at the Providence Art Club. So for both the individual artist and the institution, let me leave off with Stetson's word. "My duty is to serve the ends of the universe, not by being less of an individual, but by being more of one, not by being less self-reliant, but more self-reliant, because feeling that self is right." And with this quote, you can see why Charles Walter Stetson, in his words and in his art, transforms you.